Okay, so here we are, back. I've actually finished blending the canopy in and smoothing it out. It required 3 or 4 applications of the Gear Gear Surfacer, and then a light application of some Tamiya basic putty over the top of that, thinned with Mr. Colour Thinner, just brushed on like very thick surfacer. The reason for that was that although the Gear Black Surfacer was working in terms of filling the gap, it wasn't really going quick enough. So once I'd sealed that gap up so that no other filler could get through there, I was happy to use a slightly thicker filler like this to do the majority of it. And then it was a case of just sanding it with sponges and like, making sure I kept the areas that had to be clear masked off while I did that. And it was a fairly simple job, 5 minutes or so to blend that windscreen in. And then with that done, I could mask the canopy, which was simply done with various pieces of Tamiya tape, pressed into the panels, pressed into the frame lines, and cut to shape with a fresh scalpel blade. And then we're ready to really get on with the painting now. One of the first things I want to do before I actually start painting the model is to give the canopy a coat of interior green, just to make sure that when you look at it when you're looking at the interior through the canopy, the interior looks green in spite of the fact that the frame lines themselves will be mainly dark earth. It's one of those little things that helps with the accuracy of the model, because frame lines are generally inside the aircraft will be a different colour. So all we're doing is taking a little bit of let's get the model on there. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, and all I'm going to use is a little bit of Mr. Colour 351, which is the interior US interior green, to spray that to spray those frame lines. So just check the flow through my airbrush a second with a little bit of lacquer thinner, that's fine. So all I'm going to do is just put a few drops of the interior green. This has already been thinned out before, so it doesn't need thinning any. And then with the interior green, just making sure that we've got a spray through there, and just running over the canopy like so. And there's that done. So all I need to do now is just clean the airbrush. Now the areas that I have sanded and the areas that I've just painted, interior green, what I then want to do is just reprime those with Mr. Surfacer 1200, just so I've got a uniform colour for the rest of the painting to come. So let's just check that my brush is my airbrush is as clean as I can make it. It doesn't have to be as clean as I can make it, as long as there's not too much excess of the green left in there. So we're just picking up the Mr. Colour 1200. Just pop the lid off. And then we're just going to add A few drops of the 1200. Again, just seeing how it comes through, I'm happy with that. Right, so we're ready to actually start applying the main colours now. This is going to be a standard RAF camouflage. I'm not going to do too much research into what the US equivalents will be. I'm just going to use standard RAF colours on this one. So the colour we're going to start with is on the undersides, which is Sky. In this instance it's Guns Mr Colour number 368. It's from their RAF colour sets. So this is a pot which has had quite a lot of it used already, so it's the one thing with Mr Colour is that you can put mixed paint back into the pot and it doesn't affect the paint like it would with say acrylics or enamels. It doesn't have any bad effects on the paint over time. So, so we're ready to start spraying the underside. As ever, I'll be using Mr Colour levelling thinner, which has got the retarder in it to help the paint lie down. So we just got my airbrush here. I'm just going to pour some of the mixture in. It's not going to require that much, and then I'm going to thin it back with some Mr Colour levelling thinner. Give it a mix, and then we're going to check what my flow's like. And I've immediately got a really good flow, so we're ready to start spraying. Now the one good thing about a uniform, having a good uniform coat of primer, in this case the light grey primer, is that it requires less of the overcoats to get a good coverage, because you're not trying to cover disparate shades or tones, fillers and that kind of stuff. You're just coating over a good coat of primer. So as you can see, that's going on really nicely. So I'm just going to go over the model and apply a decent coat of Sky over the entire undersides, and then we'll talk about weathering it. Right, so that's the Sky undersides done. It took about 3 or 4 minutes to get that coat on. So what I'm going to do now, bearing in mind this aircraft is going to be representative of an aircraft which was tested at Boscombe Down but never actually saw frontline service. I don't want to be too heavy with the weathering on it, because it wouldn't, I don't think, have got that weathered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across and I'm going to use a paler colour to give a cloudy faded pattern to some of the to the panels. So there's still about probably getting on for 1/4 cup of Sky in there, which I really don't need. As I said, you can tip thinned paint back into the pot with Mr Colour with no issues whatsoever. So what I want to do now is make this colour much lighter. So what I'm going to use for that is white. So I'm just going to look through my collection of Mr. Colour for a suitable white. So in this instance I'm going to use 316, which is the Federal Standard 17875, the Insignia white. It's a tiny little bit off-white, but for this purpose, for this model, it's really not going to matter. Now I've tipped away just about all of the sky that was in there, so all I've got really left is the dregs, which is fine because all I'm going to do is add a few drops of our white to make the colour a lot paler. Then I'm going to thin it right back, so I've got a really thin pale mixture here. As I said, we're not going to overdo the weathering on this model because I don't think it would have been particularly heavily weathered, given the fact it never actually saw service. So I'm just going to spray through until we're getting a good pattern, which I am. And then it's just a case of going across the model and spraying in different directions in panels to get a really good, get a cloud pattern. Okay, it's my opinion that whenever I do this, I do tend to overdo it initially because I always like to go back to the original colour in order to tone it back. I think that gives a better... quite a lot of people would stop just doing this, but I tend to find that it makes it look like you've sprayed weathering on, so we need to blend it back more when it's dry. But for now, go in a squiggle pattern one way on the panel, squiggle pattern the other way on the panel, move on to the next panel. It's really easy, especially with things like Mr. Colour, which thin and spray so well. So that's all I'm doing, is moving panel by panel. You know, missing some panels out, accentuating other panels more, going for, you know, a pretty random appearance overall. Now if you wanted to do some heavier weathering for a model, what I would do is after this I would then darken the colour, darken the original sky, and go back and do the same thing, just with a darker colour. But as like I say, we don't want to, we're not interested in overdoing it on this particular subject. I'm going to stick with the lighter colour. Okay, so I'm happy with that as it is. Now, as I said, subtlety is the key with this, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean out my pale mix. From my airbrush. Okay. It's not essential to get the airbrush perfectly clean before we move on to the next stage, because we're basically working with the same colours, so just getting rid of the majority of the paint is good enough. Now what I want to do now is I want to tone this back a little bit, just to blend it in a bit more. Now what I'm going to use for that is the original colour, but I'm going to thin it or dilute it with some clear, and then thin it right back. So I'm just looking in my collection of paints for the clear. So bear with me, just a that'll be fine. Okay, so we've got Mr. Hobby GX100, which is Super Clear 3, as it's called. It doesn't matter. It's just a clear varnish. It's going to do the job we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few drops of that into my colour cup. Okay, and then I'm going to add a couple of drops, or a drop as it is, of Mr. Colour of the Sky Colour, and then again I'm going to thin it right back, probably with 90% thinners in there. So what I've got now is basically it's a gloss varnish coat, but with some of the original Sky Colour in it. So in giving this model now just a just misting this over the areas that we've done, and all that's doing is just toning back the shading that I've done a little bit, just blending in a bit more. It looks far better to me than having the shading look quite stark on the surface. It's also got the added advantage, hopefully, that because I've mixed it with gloss varnish, it's going to make this surface quite shiny, certainly shiny enough that I can apply decals to it without having to gloss the, apply a gloss coat prior to decals. Hopefully the paint will now be shiny enough that will be unnecessary. So that's overall, that's a really good finish. I'm really quite happy with that. Let's just make sure I do everything, so that'll include the undercarriage doors here that you see me spraying as I go along. So there's that. So unlike the rest of the paint that I can just tip back into the bottle, there's not really a lot I can do with this paint. I could tip this back in with the clear back into the original pot, but I don't really want to adulterate the colour or shade or finish of the original paint, so that is just going to get tipped away, and then we can clean our airbrush out. So I'll clean the airbrush out, and then we'll get that masked off shortly, and then we'll be ready to start applying the darker to the top side. I'm going to be busy for the rest of today and tomorrow, so it's probably going to be, it's Monday afternoon now, so we're probably looking at Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon before I can continue with that.